I just found out my wife secretly sold our family home for $250, $0 to her shady cousin, then forged my signature to hide it, all during our custody battle over our kids and a pending lawsuit over the $600, $0 inheritance she's been secretly siphoning. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Sarah, turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. It all started with little signs, missed dates, secretive texts, and her suddenly being overly protective of her phone. I guess I was naive at first, telling myself it was just work stress or her trying to handle some personal stuff. But then I noticed she was acting weird around the house, always nervous when I came near her phone, deleting messages quickly, and acting defensive when I asked her who she was texting. Things got suspicious when I saw her phone light up late at night, and I couldn't help but glance at the screen. There was a message from someone named Mike. Just a first name, no last name, but the tone was flirtatious. She quickly swiped it away, but I saw enough to know something was off. I asked her about it and she brushed it off with a laugh, saying I was imagining things. She told me Mike was just an old friend she was catching up with, nothing more. I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I knew that wasn't the whole story. Then came the day I decided to do some digging. I had access to her email, and I found receipts from hotel stays, strange bank transfers, and mysterious emails that didn't add up. At first, I thought maybe she was hiding some kind of affair or secret life, but I wasn't prepared for what I uncovered next. I found a series of emails between her and her cousin, Tyler, who's got a shady reputation, and it turned out they had been conspiring behind my back for months. Tyler was involved in some illegal dealings, and Sarah was right there, helping him cover his tracks. What floored me was the realization that she had sold our family home, our safe haven, the place where we raised our kids, for $250, $0, and she did it all without telling me. She forged my signature on the paperwork, too, to make it look legit. She had been secretly siphoning money from our inheritance, more than $600, $0 she'd been hiding in offshore accounts and shell companies, all during our ongoing custody battle over the kids, while I was fighting to keep my family intact. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, and I felt sick. I couldn't believe she'd do all that behind my back, sell the house, steal the inheritance, and still lie to my face about her innocence. I felt like I didn't even know her anymore. How could she betray me that way, especially when I was out here fighting for custody, trying to keep our family together? It was like she was playing some twisted game, using me, lying to my face, and secretly building a whole new life without me. I was furious, hurt, and completely shattered. The worst part, I had no idea how long she'd been planning this or how deep her lies went. That night I sat in the dark, staring at the mess she left behind, feeling numb. My mind raced. What's next? Do I confront her? Do I fight for the truth? Or do I just walk away knowing I've been played for a fool? The betrayal wasn't just about the money or the house. It was the fact that she'd lied so blatantly, so effortlessly, that I started questioning everything about our marriage. How could I trust her again? How could I even look at her the same way? That's when I realized I had to do something, but I didn't know what yet. All I knew was that my life was about to change forever. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding and my stomach was in knots. I couldn't sleep after what I'd discovered the night before. I kept replaying everything, her secret dealings, the forged signatures, the house sale, the inheritance. It was like my entire world had been turned upside down. I had to get to the bottom of it no matter what. I started digging through more of her emails and bank statements. I found even more disturbing stuff, hidden accounts, transfers to offshore banks, fake invoices. It was clear she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She'd been living a double life, pretending everything was fine while secretly siphoning off money and plotting her escape. I felt a mixture of rage and despair. How could she do this? How could she lie and betray me like that, especially when I was out here fighting for custody of our kids? I decided I needed to confront her directly, but I wanted to do it smart. I couldn't just accuse her outright. She was the queen of lies, and I knew she'd deny everything. I needed proof, solid proof, to make her own words backfire on her. I also wanted to see how far she was willing to go to keep her secrets hidden. So I set up a little surveillance, nothing illegal, just enough to catch her in the act if she slipped up. That afternoon, I followed her to a coffee shop downtown. She met with Tyler, her cousin. I saw them talking intensely, exchanging something in a small envelope. When she left, I followed her back home and found her acting nervous, packing around the house, trying to hide something. I knew then she was hiding more than I thought. I felt the familiar sting of betrayal, but I also knew I had to stay calm. I needed her to slip up, to say something that would reveal her lies. Over the next few days, I kept my eyes open. I found out she'd been receiving regular payments from Tyler, another wave of proof that she was in this deep. I also discovered she'd been lying to the kids about where the money came from, telling them she was investing in their future, when in reality, she was lining her pockets and hiding everything from me. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her deception ran. One night, I finally decided to confront her. I sat her down in the living room, heart pounding, and told her I knew everything. I laid out the evidence, the emails, the bank transfers, the forged signatures. Her face turned white. She tried to deny it at first, but I wasn't buying it anymore. She went on the defensive, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her, saying I was overreacting. She even had the audacity to lie outright, claiming she was just trying to protect the family from some imaginary threat. That's when I saw the bitchy side of her, the way she dismissed my concerns like I was just some insignificant obstacle in her grand scheme. The betrayal hit me hard. It was one thing to suspect her, but hearing her lie so blatantly, knowing she'd been lying to my face for months, made me feel sick. I'd always thought she was the perfect wife, beautiful, smart, ambitious. Turns out she was a master manipulator, hiding her true colors behind a facade of innocence. I felt so many emotions at once: anger, sadness, disgust. I was furious she'd betrayed me, but I also felt heartbreak for what I'd lost. My trust was shattered, and I wondered if I'd ever be able to see her the same way again. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything: how she lied, how she manipulated the situation, how she sold our home without my knowledge, all the promises she made, all the times she looked me in the eye and swore she loved me. It was all a lie. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to decide what to do next. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without consequences. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a surge of determination. I needed to protect my kids and myself from her lies and her greed. That's when I knew my next move would be crucial, because once I stepped into that next phase, everything would change forever. After that confrontation, I knew I couldn't just sit around and hope everything would blow over. Sarah's lies had cut too deep, and her betrayal had left me feeling like I was standing on quicksand. I had enough evidence now to take serious action, but I also knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't just go to the authorities or lawyers without a plan. She was a cunning woman, and I had to be smarter than her if I wanted to come out on top. First, I decided to get a professional involved. I hired a private investigator to dig into her financials more thoroughly. I needed every shred of proof I could get: hidden accounts, offshore investments, anything that showed just how far she'd gone to hide her money. The pie was good. Within a few days, he uncovered more than I could have imagined. There were multiple offshore accounts, shell companies registered under fake names, and even a few shady transactions that looked like money laundering. It was clear she'd been planning her escape for a long time, and she'd been very careful about covering her tracks. But no matter how carefully she tried to hide it, I had enough now to blow her cover wide open. Meanwhile, I kept building my case for the custody battle. I knew her actions: selling the house secretly, siphoning money, forging my signature, would not look good for her in court. I also found out she'd been lying to the kids about the house sale, telling them it was for the best, all while she was secretly cashing out and planning her new life. I felt sick every time I thought about her manipulating the kids like that, twisting the truth to serve her own ends. The more I learned, the more I realized I had to act fast before she managed to do more damage. One evening, I caught her sneaking around the house with her phone. She was trying to delete some files. I managed to grab her phone while she was distracted. That's when I found texts between her and Tyler, discussing how they'd split the money and cover their tracks. I saw explicit plans for how she'd hide the rest of her assets and what she'd say if questioned. It was all laid out in black and white. That was the final straw. I knew I had her dead to rights now. I could go to the lawyer, show her all the evidence, and finally put an end to her manipulation. The next day I met with my lawyer. I handed over all the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, the Pi's report, everything. I told him I wanted full custody of the kids, a halt to her access, and to freeze her assets. I wanted her to be held accountable for the fraud, the forgery, and the theft. I also wanted her to pay back every cent she'd stolen. My lawyer was impressed with the amount of proof I had, and he assured me we had a strong case. The wheels were in motion now, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I was finally taking control, and dread because I knew this was only the beginning of a very ugly fight. Meanwhile, Sarah caught wind of my plans. She started to get defensive, throwing out lies and accusations, trying to spin the story in her favor. She called me paranoid, said I was trying to ruin her reputation and that I was overreacting. But I didn't care anymore. I'd seen too much, uncovered too many lies. I knew she was trying to manipulate the situation, but I had the evidence to shut her up. I was ready for whatever she threw at me. I just wanted justice, for her to face the consequences of her greed and betrayal. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction, knowing I was finally fighting back against her lies. But underneath it all, I was still hurting. I loved her once, and now I was fighting to protect my kids from her. That's what kept me going, the hope that I could somehow still salvage what's left of my family, or at least make her pay for what she'd done. I was ready to see this through, no matter how messy or painful it got. Because in the end, I knew I deserved the truth, and I was damn sure going to get it. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm without an end in sight. I was constantly on edge, waiting for the next bombshell, the next piece of evidence that Sarah was trying to spin her way out of this mess. She doubled down on her lies, of course, denying everything, calling me crazy, accusing me of making all this up just to ruin her. But I had enough now. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of it, not after what I'd uncovered. I remember sitting at my kitchen table one night, going over all the documents, emails, and reports I'd collected. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger because she'd betrayed me and our family, relief because I finally had proof that couldn't be dismissed. I thought about how she'd been living a double life, selling our house behind my back, siphoning money, forging my signature. She turned into someone I didn't recognize. The woman I'd loved, trusted, and built a life with was now just a stranger hiding her greed behind a mask of innocence. I decided I had to take more drastic action. I contacted a forensic accountant to dig into her financials even further. I wanted to uncover every last dollar she'd hidden, every account she'd set up, and every shady transaction. The accountant was meticulous, days of combing through her offshore accounts, shell companies, and hidden assets. It was eye-opening. They found even more money, millions stashed away in foreign banks, investments she'd never disclosed, and assets she'd transferred to her family members to avoid seizure. This wasn't just about a house or a few thousand here and there. She'd been planning her escape for years, and she'd gone all out to cover her tracks. Meanwhile, I prepared for the next step, filing for full custody of the kids. I knew Sarah's manipulation was aimed at keeping them in the dark, but I couldn't let her continue to lie to them. I wanted to protect them from her greed and deceit. I gathered all the evidence I had, her emails, bank statements, witness testimonies from the Pi, and the forensic report. I wanted the court to see the full picture, that she'd been dishonest from the start, that she was more concerned with her own wealth than our children's well-being. The custody hearing was scheduled for a few weeks out. I felt nervous, but also determined. I knew I had a strong case. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd do something desperate to keep her secrets hidden. That woman was nothing if not resourceful when it came to lying and manipulating. I had to stay vigilant. In the meantime, Sarah escalated her efforts to gaslight me. She started accusing me of spying on her, of hacking her phone, of trying to ruin her reputation. It was classic her, blame everyone else, deny everything, and act innocent. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew her game. I'd seen her true colors, bitchy, manipulative, and utterly ruthless when it came to protecting her own interests. One night she had the nerve to tell the kids that I was trying to take away their mother and that I was jealous of her success. I wanted to scream at her. How dare she use the kids like pawns? How dare she manipulate them into thinking I was the bad guy? That was the final straw. I realized I had to be the one to protect them from her lies, no matter how much it hurt. As I sat there, staring at the evidence spread out on the table, I knew this wasn't just about money or a house anymore. It was about justice, about making her face the truth she's been running from. I had to stay strong for my kids. For myself. Whatever came next, I was ready. I'd fought for my family once, and now I was fighting for what was right. The pain was deep, but I knew I had to keep going, because at the end of this I wanted her to pay for what she'd done. And I wanted my kids to see that truth always comes out in the end. The court date finally arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. I had all my evidence laid out: emails, bank statements, forensic reports, witness testimonies from the pie. I knew Sarah would do everything to spin her story to make herself look like the victim in all this. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not after everything I'd found. I sat there, trying to keep my nerves in check, knowing that this hearing could determine the future of my kids, my life, everything I'd fought for. Sarah showed up looking smug, a little too confident, like she thought she had already won. She tried her usual tactic: fake tears, guilt-tripping the court, claiming I was trying to destroy her. She spun some story about how she was doing everything for the family, that I was just jealous of her success and trying to ruin her reputation. I couldn't believe how brazen she was, lying straight to the judge's face, pretending she was the victim when she'd been the one orchestrating all of this behind the scenes. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out everything. How she sold our house without telling me, forged my signature, siphoned off more than $500,000 from our inheritance, and hid assets in offshore accounts. I showed the court the emails, the bank transfer records, the forensic accountant's report. I could see the judge's expression change as I presented each piece of evidence. It was like watching her entire house of cards collapse in real time. Sarah's face turned pale when I finished. She tried to deny everything, claiming she had no idea about the offshore accounts or the shell companies, but her words sounded hollow. I could tell she was panicking. The judge looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. She was caught red-handed. She'd lied, manipulated, and stolen right in front of everyone. The courtroom was silent as the judge announced her decision: full custody of the kids awarded to me, her assets frozen, and a court order for her to pay back every cent she'd stolen. The moment the ruling was read, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with anger. I had fought hard for this, fought to protect my children from her greed and lies. But I also felt a deep sadness, sadness for what I'd lost, for the woman I once loved. As she was led out of the courtroom, she shot me a venomous look, and I saw the bitchy, manipulative side of her again. She knew she'd lost everything, and the look in her eyes was pure hatred. In the days that followed, I started the process of rebuilding my life. The court's decision was a victory, but the emotional scars ran deep. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I had to explain to my kids what happened, and I tried to do it honestly but gently. They didn't understand all the details, but I made sure they knew I loved them and I was doing everything I could to protect them from her lies. Sarah, of course, didn't take the court's ruling well. She tried to appeal, to drag things out, to make me look like the bad guy. But I had the evidence, and I had the court's backing. I knew she'd be furious, but I didn't care. I'd fought for my family's integrity, and I was determined to keep the kids safe from her manipulations. I started working with a financial advisor to make sure the stolen money was recovered and to secure my own future. I also took steps to ensure she wouldn't be able to do this again, changing locks, monitoring accounts, and keeping a close eye on everything. Looking back, I realize this whole nightmare has changed me forever. I've learned that trust is fragile, and sometimes the people you love the most can betray you in ways you never imagined. But I also learned that justice can prevail, even when the odds seem stacked against you. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll never let anyone betray me like that again. I've lost a lot, but I've gained clarity. I now see that standing up for myself and protecting my children was the only way forward, and I hope anyone else in a similar situation learns that. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to get the truth, and that truth, no matter how painful, is always worth fighting for. In the aftermath of everything, life feels different, sharper, more real. The house is quieter now, less cluttered with her lies and manipulations. The kids are starting to settle into a new routine, one built on honesty and stability, not her deception. I won't lie. I still have nightmares sometimes, images of her sneaking around, the fake smile she put on when she was lying to my face. But I also have a strange sense of relief, knowing I finally uncovered the truth and fought to protect what matters most. I've come to realize that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are. I've learned to trust my instincts more, to be more cautious about who I let into my life. I've also learned that some people are just fundamentally selfish, people who will lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want without a second thought. But I've also learned that justice can be found, even in the darkest moments. The courts, the evidence, the fight, each step reaffirmed that truth can prevail if you're willing to stand your ground. Looking back, I see how naive I was, how blindly I trusted her. I thought we had a solid life, built on love and mutual respect. Turns out she was just playing a long game, selling the house, siphoning the inheritance, pretending to be the perfect wife. I don't regret fighting for my kids or exposing her lies. If anything, I wish I'd seen through her sooner. But what's done is done. Now I focus on rebuilding, on moving forward with my sons and daughters, making sure they feel loved and secure. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, know that you're not alone. Betrayal is one of the hardest things to deal with, especially when it comes from someone you trusted deeply. But don't be afraid to dig deep, to seek the truth no matter how uncomfortable it is. Protect yourself and your family. Get help if you need to, whether it's legal, financial, or emotional. The road to justice isn't easy and it's often messy, but it's worth it. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back. It's about setting things right, ensuring she doesn't get away with her lies and theft. My victory isn't just about the court ruling. It's about reclaiming my life, my integrity, and my peace of mind. I've lost a lot, but I've gained clarity and strength I never knew I had. And in the end, that's what truly matters. So if you're out there feeling broken, betrayed, or lost, hold on. Keep fighting for the truth. Stand firm. Because even in the darkest times, there's always a way to come out stronger on the other side. And trust me, nothing feels better than finally seeing justice served and knowing you fought for what's right.